Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the JSN Podcast. Boys, why don't you introduce yourselves?
Hello,
Hi,
everybody. I am Nico. Today
hi,
we will be talking
it's
about
Jay.
Ukraine. Big boom boom in Ukraine. My beautiful country. Bye bye.
Yeah,
And now it
to,
is
today we
radioactive.
today we will be discussing hit show Chernobyl on HBO. Very good show about the big explosion in the beautiful
What do you
Soviet
mean?
Union.
He's fake.
Okay.
He's all
Hate
fake.
us.
Okay, can we do the entire episode just in Russian accent, in extremely offensive and like Russian accents, probably breaking like several community guidelines, like.
Lord, no.
I'm radioactive.
Oh,
Radioactive.
God.
Whoa, oh, 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 oh. Whoa, oh, oh.
That's
I'm
more Indian than
radioactive. Radioactive.
Ukrainian ground to be like, no, but yeah, I think as you guys can tell, we're talking about the new, well, kind of new HBO miniseries. No, absolutely not. No, that's all in. That is.
That was the cringiest thing I have ever heard.
This is
Not
what
cringy as all of Salaar's intros.
I was gonna say. Like, this is what people
is
listen
false.
for. This is what people listen for, Jay.
No.
Okay,
of
no,
all the-
seriously, we should
of all-
restart.
Nah.
No, shut up.
Nah.
All the other
Yes.
ones. Of all the other ones where it's just us awkwardly saying hi, like this is honestly probably
Yeah, this is probably more entertaining. But yeah.
It's also horrifically offensive.
Nah, don't worry about that. Okay.
Hey, these are the, they tried to cover up a nuclear disaster. They deserve it.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
That's not the same government anymore. Doesn't count.
also didn't they shoot that dog? All right, we'll get to that. But yeah.
Okay, that didn't actually happen. Anyways.
Okay. So as you guys can probably tell, we're talking about the new HBO, what kind of new HBO miniseries, Chernobyl. It's 5 short episodes, but damn, it was really good. So why don't we start off with what are your guys' like initial like impressions, or like what do you guys like, what are you guys' like takeaways from it? Like, how do you feel about it?
Very good. Soviet Union, best media.
So you thought it was good?
I did think it was good. I really think it's one of the best things that's come out on TV in like a really long while.
Mm-hmm.
At least, and definitely in terms of like miniseries or like shorter,
Yeah.
self-contained stories. I think it's one of the best that's come out in a while.
Mm-hmm. I could see that.
Mhm.
What do you think, Jay?
I agree, but I think it was just very good, independently of any other comparison, anything else.
Yeah, so I mean, I probably am like a kind of a detractor. By the way, slight disclaimer, I've watched the entire series within the past week. So it's still like very fresh in my mind, and like maybe I haven't had as much time to like sort of sit down with it and sort of take it in. So this might be like sort of like a more like a less developed opinion. But one of the main issues I had with it is that even though it was so short, it felt so long. Like I feel like the pacing was not great. Like there were a lot of moments when I just felt bored. You know what I mean? Like especially in like the first episode or in the second episode, like they were just, a lot of them was just, a lot of it was just boring. Like I will admit,
Really?
I will admit, after the third episode, it really picked up, and like I got like hooked, right? But like the first and second episode were kind of hard for me to sit through.
Oh, I 100% disagree. I don't know why, but like I feel the exact opposite. I think the show really moved for me in the first 3 episodes, and it was kind of the 4th and 5th one where it felt a bit more. It started to feel a bit long.
I
So
don't think the show dragged it for me at any point.
Yeah. No, I actually I'd agree with that more. I don't think it really dragged anywhere, but I'm just saying.
yeah.
How am I trying to put this? It's not that it's like it gets horrifically long and boring towards the end. I just think that the pace of the first 3 episodes is a bit faster and more engaging than the last 2.
Yeah, I could see like why you'd say that, but like I mean, like I get like the first episode, like, you know, it's when the accident happens, right? It's the explosion scene, and like, you know, everybody's
Yeah.
scrambling to figure out what it is, and what happened. Okay, honestly, I can't remember her name, but like this like the wife character whose husband was the firefighter, like
yeah.
that was
Lyudmila
yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't pronounce.
Okay,
that.
her hold.
I'm gonna keep up IMDb.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because these characters' names are like impossible to freaking remember. But her entire arc was so uninteresting to me. Like I did not care for a single second that she was on screen. Because I was like, yes, I get it. Your husband is radioactive and dying, right? Like, yes, it sucks. That is how Chernobyl and radiation and nuclear explosions work, right? Like, it's. I get that it's supposed to be like, chill, like the drama and the terror and the tragedy of the incident on the human level, right? But it just she was the most like non-exciting character, and like she
I would actually
I
disagree. That character was very well received, first of all, from a from a popular standpoint. But second of all, it's a very emotional aspect to a story which is otherwise very scientific and condemning of the Soviet Union.
Yeah, I think she's a character you really needed.
Oh,
I think
you're right. You're right. I agree
I
with you. We needed her. I just didn't
if
find
you
her compelling.
eh, I don't know. If you took her out of the show, I think you lose a really big element.
Oh,
But,
yeah, you're absolutely right.
but-
I do agree with you.
something I actually found really interesting about her character is you know how the one of the scientists played by Emily Watson, they kind of her name's like
Oh.
Lana Kamik. They admitted at the end like, oh yeah, that. They invented her for the show to kind of embody all the different scientists that helped.
Mhm.
Yeah, the
I
dozens
thought-
to hundred scientists.
Yeah. I thought that the wife character was sort of similar, where it was just kind of this made-up character
Yeah.
to kind of embody that aspect of it. I didn't know
Funny story.
that
she's
was
real.
actually a real person. Yeah, that's a real person. Which I
Really?
was really surprised about, because it kind of just seems like they just sort of make up that character to kind of cover that aspect of the show. But no, she's a real person, and that's what happened to her and her husband.
Huh. That's. I mean. That's. I mean. But I get like that. That's like like sort of. I get that it's interesting her story and like But like that. I also I agree with you that it is needed, right? Like we need to see the human side of this incident, right? At the end of the day, this entire miniseries was less even about the Soviet Union and about like the political and that kind of chaos and that kind of like game of chess, right? It was more about like the effects it had on all kinds of people, right? Whether it was politicians or scientists or regular everyday people,
I'm
know?
not sure I agree. I think it serves better as an indictment of the Soviet Union.
I think it serves all those things.
But
kind of
what do you think? What do you think its main purpose was?
I don't think it has a main purpose, but if I was to give it one, it's the political aspect. They spend
Yeah.
much more time on the political aspect than the emotional one. But the emotional one is, to use the term, impacting the rest.
Well, I think sort of like, well, it all obviously interplays with each other, but I think the main focus of this piece and kind of main message is that when you're not completely honest, when you lie, things
Get worse.
get worse, things get out of hand, things aren't controlled. Yeah, it's about the lies, and it indicts the Soviet Union. It's kind of to shine a light and say, I think I heard in some interview or something, the writer was like, "Oh, it's not like I didn't make it specifically as an indictment of Trump's America or the sort of whole fake news thing."
Okay,
But
tangent.
it's very obvious that there's sort of that it's trying to comment on like, oh, this is what was wrong with the Soviet Union, and if you look, this stuff is sort of going on now with like the lies and miscommunication.
See, okay, I feel like that is a gross mischaracterization of the show in the first place. And here's why. Alright, so when we look at what happened in the USSR, we see assassinations of people who tell the actual truth. And we see nothing similar in the US. There's no actual threat to the truth, there's just the presentation of lies in their stead, and that's arguable. All that is arguable. There's no argument to be made. The Soviet Union wasn't actively lying to its citizens.
Yeah, I think that is actually like an interesting point to bring up. That I think Nico, you are right in that it's at the end of the day it's a show about honesty, right? And it's a show about the impacts that like these small decisions, these small lapses in judgment, and how big of an impact they can have, right? And so like I mean we can see this theme running all the way to like in the very first episode when I can't remember the lead scientist, right, who was like so arrogant that he just refused to like listen to the people. Yeah, like
Meatloaf.
yeah. He refused to even like listen to the people who were telling him that like the reactor is the reactor exploded. You know what I mean? Or like the
Yeah.
and so he kept saying like, oh, they're delusional. Oh, and he kept like lying to people like especially with like the fake meter too. When he was like, oh, it's at 3.6. When
Oh, he
really,
wasn't lying there. Okay.
yeah, he wasn't lying, but it was a faulty meter, and he knew it.
No, but he doesn't know it's a okay. He doesn't know it's a faulty meter. He doesn't. He only knows that it's a low reading meter. And then when everyone's like, it's maxing out, he just getting the actual meter was also practically impossible. There was
I mean, turning a
Yeah, I
blind
don't think-
turning a blind eye is a form of lying. Like,
Yeah.
Okay, but he's not
I'll-
turning a blind eye as much as he is not getting someone killed, because the place where the actual meter was was going to kill people. You couldn't actually get the real working
Yeah.
meter.
I don't think his character was as much about. His character was like what it was about is sort of, I think when it all happened, when you heard the explosion, and I feel like this was sort of like with all the scientist characters, they couldn't accept the fact that this happened, because if it happened, they'd be done for. So they kind of were in denial. I think it's more about denial than ignorance or turning a blind eye. I think above all, it's about denial. Now, he was a cocky douchebag, so I don't think he might have just been overconfident in his abilities. But I think if you look at a lot of the other characters, like I don't know what his name was, but the guy with
Describe him.
the guy with the curly hair in the first episode.
Does he die?
And no, he's on trial at the end. He's like one of the politicians.
That person is, I can't remember their name now. Oh, that was Vladimir. That person's first name is
Vladimir.
No, it's Victor. It's Victor.
Victor.
Victor Bryukhanov. And you can find
Here
it
it is,
on
Con O'Neill, yeah. But his character was very much about denial, because like he knew if this happened, like that's it for him. So he kind of was just in, like, it's interesting because in a perfect society, like he kind of, as soon as something like this would happen, he'd be like, something went wrong, we need to fix this immediately. But with it being in the Soviet Union, failure pretty much means death. And he knew if
I
what
just want
he
to add,
thinks
that's
happened,
incorrect, but we'll get into that in a second.
well, maybe not death, but like he'd lose his job, he'd lose everything. Like they'd essentially like.
Well, then I
basically
question
his
your
life's
premise. Then I question your premise that it's exclusive to the Soviet Union. Like, take a look at the Challenger accident. The same thing happened with engineers reporting to managers and managers reporting to
I'm just talking about
government
this.
officials.
I'm talking about the specific part of the show that it's
I know, but you
denial,
can't say it's
because
exclusive to the Soviet Union in this case. That's not a fair
Not-
comparison.
okay,
Okay, this is really cool. What I said before about comparing the Soviet Union to sort of Trump's America is it basically, end of story is that it's lies are bad and equal the opposite of progress, and denial is bad and equals the opposite of progress. And when you're in situations where failure means that your career, basically everything you've ever built up, is going to be over, like you go into denial. That's pretty much what I'm trying to say.
So I was reading this thing earlier about how the 5 episodes of this series. Have you guys ever heard of the Kubler-Ross grief theory?
The 5 stages of grief.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you guys ever heard of that theory? I mean, for our listeners who aren't familiar with it, this psychologist, he came up with this theory of how people cope with loss in their life, right? And so the first stage is denial, second stage is anger, third stage is bargaining, fourth stage is depression, and fifth stage is acceptance. Right, and so I've been seeing some like theories online that people say that like the progression of this series has each episode sort of exemplifies a different aspect of that like grief theory. Of course, not like, self-contained and to a T, right? But like they sort of all have that running theme, right? I mean, take a look at like in episode 1. Obviously, we just talked about how there's a bunch of denial, right? All these scientists, they refuse to accept that this incident could have happened. They're like throughout the episode, they're like, I did everything right. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then I mean,
well, okay. I
I'm-
would also
Go ahead.
add. I think that I've been saying this a lot now. I think that the premise you're working under is incorrect again, because the scientists aren't denying. The only scientist who's denying something is Dyatlov.
No. But they're all throughout the episode. All the scientists were saying we
Those aren't
did everything
scientists.
right.
Those are bureaucrats, and those are
No. Like the scientists in the actual lab,
Yeah,
right?
well, how is it? Okay, yeah, but how are any of them wrong in saying that? They're
I mean,
not.
yeah,
They
they're
followed instructions. They went through the procedure to not follow instructions repeatedly, and it got them nowhere.
yeah, but the point is, at the end of the day, it is on them, right? No matter whether they intended to, no matter if they were ordered to, it's on them, right? The accident. So like the context.
Jay,
Go ahead.
you can't argue that the overriding theme of the first episode is not denial.
Yeah.
I agree, but that's only because Dyatlov and the bureaucracy are denying things. The scientists are the transparent ones.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. But like they're being told to deny it, like.
Yes, and they say no, we're not going to deny it at least twice before they start denying it again.
But the point we're trying to get out now is that the overriding theme of that first episode is denial.
Yeah, and then the funny part is like I didn't really see like the theme of anger in the second one, but in the third episode I actually saw this sort of theme of bargaining like a very very like pervading it, right? Because we see a lot of times where the wife, again, sorry, I can't remember her name again, but the wife was but the wife of that firefighter, she has to like bargain with various people. She has to like argue with them just to be able to see her husband. When she sees him, she's denying that he's not okay, and that like the radiation. And then also we see
the miners bargained with Jared
Mr.
Harrison
Cole.
Stellan Skarsgård.
Yeah, exactly.
I
like
mean, oh yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of bargaining. Back to what you said about episode 2 and anger. I saw the show a little while before you did. I think.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, I think anger lines up pretty well with episode 2, because I remember Jared Harris's character. He was at the start of it. He was angry because all these people were about to dismiss it. He was Stellan Skarsgård went there with him so ignorantly, and he was angry that people were being this ignorant, that this was allowed to happen. And I can see how anger is sort of the overriding theme of that second episode. And
and not just that, but it's got a lot of panic and stuff. You know what I mean? And panic sort of comes from a similar place of like frustration and like angst and anger. You know what I mean? So
and then the third episode is really the episode where I think they sort of solve. Well, not. Yeah, they for the most part solve it in that episode. I don't think I don't think you can really put one definitive moment where they solve it, but pretty much in the third episode is that. So it's a lot about making decisions and bargaining and trying to find ways to kind of stem this damage, but really at the end of the day, the damage is done. I think.
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, if we continue with this sort of talking about this like theory that some people have come up with this, if we see the fourth episode as sort of exemplifying depression, I think I could really see that.
Killing dogs, and
because not just that, but it's all about it's about giving up, right? All you're doing is ending things, right? They're killing things, they're destroying things, right? Because it's sort of after this bargaining and trying to figure out and the conflict, and after they've made some progress, it's just about this sort of slow descent into this wasteland. You know what I mean? And this depressing, quiet wasteland, the exclusion zone around in Pripyat. you know,
Yeah.
the people leaving, the towns being quiet and empty and
Mhm.
evacuated, right? So
As much as
yeah.
sort of horror and fear dominate
Mhm.
throughout this entire show, I'd say of all of them, episode 3 is probably at the end of it, as they start solving it, probably the most hopeful, the most
Mhm.
uplifting. And
Yeah.
once you finish episode 3, you're kind of like
In
in
a
a
decent
better
mood,
mood
yeah. Like,
because you're
dude.
like, oh, okay, they're getting stuff done. They're finally fixing stuff.
Mhm.
It's making you feel good. You're like, we're on a track for everything to be solved. And then it's like when you get to episode 4, it's sort of a reminder to you when it skips several months later. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, even after everything the previous episode, all this progress and success they made, like there's still damage.
Mhm.
It's still creating more radiation. Like
Yeah.
this isn't something that can ever fully be fixed.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
and
it
what
stays.
we were talking about earlier is actually what I was talking about earlier about like getting hooked on episode 3. That sort of sense of like hope and like actual like progress is what actually hooked me in episode 3, right? That's why I episode 1 and 2 were kind of a little frustrating for me because I was like, yeah, I get it. The explosion happened. Everything sucks and people are being shitty about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I
You know, yeah.
Yeah, no. I think that's sort of like just a difference in our I guess movie taste
Yeah.
or just sort
Media
of movie
taste,
taste in
yeah.
general, because I know you definitely like more of like a political drama or
Mhm.
something
Oh
like
yeah,
that,
I'm a huge fan of those
which I
kind of things.
definitely like also, but I absolutely love horror, and I
Mhm.
think if you view the first 3 episodes as sort of horror,
Yeah.
they're just a masterclass.
Yeah, I agree. When we started getting in like the third episode, especially to this sort of like this, like I said earlier, like this game of political chess, it was so exciting for me. It gave me like Breaking Bad vibes. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
these various geniuses in their areas and people who all had their own motives and own like you know best interests. They were all just sort of getting at each other and trying to figure out the best course of action. And, like all those men in suits sitting in the same room, you could feel the tension every single one of those scenes. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I thought, and that's where I just got hooked. I thought it was so impressive, and I'm and looking at the aftermath and like the next few episodes, which was like that was like the best that was sort of like seeing like okay, look at what these people like after all that drama accomplished, and then look how crappy it is even now, right? And look at this terrible stuff that is a fallout. So all that like you know that political chess that little those moves, right? They all just resulted, like you said, in things still like things being irreversibly damaged, right? Just because of a few bad decisions by certain people and a few bad calls,
Hmm.
you know.
Also, I just I just want to quickly mention, because I think we're still sort of on the 4th episode, which is
Mm-hmm.
depression.
Yeah.
They introduced a actor or a character specifically for that episode.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, y- his name is Barry Keegan, and
What's the character's name?
he was the soldier. Um,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Pavel. He was the sort of the soldier that was the young one that was meant that they assigned to kill the dogs.
Oh yeah, yeah. That little guy
Yeah,
that he was like, oh,
Barry Keegan.
if you let him suffer, I'll kill you. Like the one he told it to the
Yeah,
kid,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
That kid, this actor Barry Keegan, is quietly becoming one of my not favorite, but one of my more liked actors.
Mm-hmm.
He's been
He
he's
was in Dunkirk, right?
he was in Dunkirk. He was in Killing of a Sacred Deer, which I don't expect you guys to know, neither
Yeah,
American Animals, but
I've never seen it.
both are movies that, well, all three, Killing the Sacred Deer, Dunkirk, and American Animals, are movies I absolutely love. And I don't know if you've heard of Why the Last Man, Salaar.
No, I haven't.
It's a really famous comic book series about they like a post-apocalyptic world where there's like all the women are still alive, but all the men just disappear except for this one man who's the last surviving one. And sort of like what would happen,
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting. And apparently he's set to be in Uh,
The
they've
movie.
been trying to make it into a show for a while, but
Wow, that's pretty dope.
it's in pre-production right now. But he's gonna be in that, so I just want to shout out an
Mhm.
actor that I really like. Anyway,
But if we go on to, I mean, if we're just gonna,
Alright.
if we can, what are you
Okay.
gonna say, Jay?
I feel like the stages of grief model is kind of being shoehorned here.
Mhm.
Honestly.
no,
personally.
I don't think so.
Okay. Well.
I
Okay.
think it fits actually really well.
Okay. Here's why. We're looking at grief we're looking at the theme of the episode, but the stages of grief are intended to be looked at as like in respect to the grief we're seeing. You know, that is to say that when you're seeing, for example, bargaining, that's not bargaining because bargaining, when described in the stages of grief model, is more in reference to bargaining with powers that you cannot control, that to allow you that you cannot
Yeah,
control
and
influence.
and no, but that exact thing is what we see, right? It's not literal. Like, yes, in Kubler Ross's original model, it's like people bargain with God, for example, etc. Right? But like we see this, I think we do see this theme of bargaining with powers who are apathetic, right? Like when that one professor is like arguing and like begging these people to like or like begging the other men, the other politicians, the other bureaucrats, right, to like expand the exclusion zone, right, evacuate this larger area, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
right, like he's still bargaining with these people, he's trying to have them understand, right, like the
But that's not bargaining to cope with grief. That's bargaining to minimize grief, which are different things.
I don't know. I think that a lot of it comes from guilt. A lot of the reason that he fights so hard is because he knows that like the terrible crap that is coming of of all this lack of truth and of all this hiding. You know what I mean?
Legasov's not guilty of that. He's not arguing that he's not
Yeah, but
saying that
I think he still feels
reference
guilt.
to that. He doesn't. He feels not guilt but anger. Legasov's character is effectively anger for most of it.
Is Legasov Jared Harris?
Yes,
Okay.
you have IMDb open. You can see this.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But I don't know. I think, I mean, obviously like this, like obviously I don't think they were writing the episodes intentionally to align with that, but I think it's kind of interesting how like it kind of yeah, I agree that like you have to take some creative liberties when we're talking about the show to apply this model to them, right? But I think it still does sort of like have like a loose interesting trend when we see that like these stages of grief don't just apply on a human level, but they apply on societal levels, right? When we see like these huge tragedies happen, I mean, this show sort of like, I mean, like subtly or explicitly or implicitly, it shows the process by which a society, a group of people deal with these kind of tragedies, right? On a human level, on a political level, on these various things, right?
But that's
Yeah,
only through the construction of the show in a certain way. Like, it's only coincidental because for example, you mentioned seeing the dogs being shot. That if you're representing that as depression, that's only because the showrunners decided to put that there as a reminder that, the third episode is not all sunshine and roses in the end.
Mm-hmm.
That's not...
even
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I just want to say, even if the filmmakers didn't intentionally make it so that the 5 episodes follow the 5 stages of grief, I think that honestly makes it even more interesting, the fact that either A, they subconsciously wrote this story and constructed this story in such a way that perfectly fits this model, which kind of hints at some universal storytelling structure, I guess, or B, the fact that we're subconsciously assigning this model to a story that it surprisingly really fits
And
well.
so what I was gonna say is that I think what actually is like gives like takes the cake as to why I really like I have a good feeling about this theory is that when we look at the final episode is a lot about, it's not as much horror and it's more about like the focus on the redemptive character moments, you know what I mean? It's focused on like what actually went wrong and about these different people in the end, right? Like and it I think it falls into that last category of acceptance, right? Of like these people finally being held responsible for their actions. You know what I mean? or like
I mean,
partially
air
at
quote-
least.
But I mean,
Yeah.
who's being held responsible in this case?
I mean, they had the trial, you know.
Yeah, but those aren't all the people who are responsible. It's very incomplete holding of responsibility.
Yeah,
It's
you're
actually so
right.
incomplete. Like most of the nuclear scientific community, by that reasoning, would have been held to task for it, which would not have been unjust necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, again, I think it's like, I brought up this model. I mean, just because I think it's interesting how like these sort of themes were very apparent throughout these various episodes, whether or not they were like completely, you know, like the overarching message of each episode. I agree with you, Jay. Yeah, definitely the overall message of these episodes wasn't, you know, directly to exemplify these traits. But I think it's just interesting how like the natural progression of the show and the natural progression of the events sort of aligned so clearly with this theory of grief and coping with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
And
think
yeah.
if you talk if what you want to talk about is filmmaker intention,
Mm-hmm.
I think it just sort of
Not as much
our
what I'm referencing.
well I'm just sort of making a general statement here. In terms of like any criticism of art, if you talk about original artist intention, you'll get nowhere. I've always believed in sort of this saying that once an artwork is made, it's given to the public, to the audience to make of it whatever they will. So whether even if so basically my point is even if they didn't intend it to follow this model, that's all what art criticism is about, is that somehow whether it actually is meant to follow this or it just so happened to follow this,
Mm-hmm.
it gives us stuff to talk about in terms of themes and storytelling,
Yeah, I mean,
and
yeah.
it creates talking points and really interesting discussion.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, I think that whether or not the filmmakers had in mind the Kubler-Ross theory, I think it brings to light some. I think it brings to light, which is why I disagreed with you two about the true purpose of the show. Right? You guys were talking about how, you know, the true purpose of the show is to show how, you know, deception and how telling the incomplete truth, how hiding things can end up, you know, being like a domino effect, making worse things worse. Right? But I feel like it's more about how people cope with tragedy, right? Like, and I feel like it's almost a character study on various specific people and how they had very specific people and groups of people, and how they were affected by this tragedy, right? Whether it's that kid, what was that kid's name?
Barry Keoghan?
Pavel? Wait,
Yeah.
Pavel. Okay.
Whether it was him or whether it was Ludmilla, whether it was the professor guy. Yeah, well, the point is like
It's easier.
these various
The characters.
these various characters they were focused on, and we saw the effects we saw the direct effects of these events on them, and it was I felt like it was almost more of a character study show than it was a horror show or a tragedy event show or whatever. You know what I mean?
I think it's everything. I think you could watch it again, Salaar, and you could totally change your perspective on it and think, no,
Yeah.
I was wrong the first time. It was actually about deception and lies. I think, or me and Jay could sit down. Jay and I, sorry, don't correct me, could sit down and rewatch it and sort of pick up more on the whole grief aspect of it.
Yeah.
I think that's why this show. I think that's why so many people are talking about it, and I think this is why it's one of the best shows I've seen in a while, because really I think there's so many ways to attack how they present and tell this story
Absolutely.
that you can gain a lot of different themes and ideas from it, whether they are intended or unintended.
I agree, and I think that's part of the beauty of this show. I think you're right, is that you can get out. I feel like everybody can get out of this show, like they can get something out of this show, right?
You're getting something out of it, no
yeah,
matter what.
like whether they relate with what's her name, whether they relate with like Ludmilla, or whether they relate with the kid, what's his name, Pavel, whether they relate with the professor, whether they relate with freaking Gorbevich, right?
I just like to
Or
add,
Gorbachev,
right,
yeah.
if you relate to killing dogs,
No, I mean being
Yeah,
put in a.
that's a literal.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
so literal.
I meant more in being forced into a position and doing something that you didn't agree with for the
Also,
sake of the
loss of
greater good.
innocence.
Yeah, exactly. Loss of innocence. Like there are like these various themes that like each of these characters exemplify. That I feel like the show does so well of like showing how changed each of these characters are. I was talking earlier about Breaking Bad, and I feel like this show does something that Breaking Bad does as good as Breaking Bad does, and that's why it's so impressive. It shows how circumstances can completely like mold people, right? How they can how external factors can completely change people's personalities, the decisions they make, their priorities, like their values, right? I mean, we see people
Yeah.
we see people like valuing human life as like we see people like trading lives to see like okay sacrificing this like sending these 1,000 people off to die is like whatever, you know what I mean, because of the circumstances they were put in,
Yeah.
and I feel like shows like that are especially impactful because everybody can get something out of them,
That's actually a really good comparison to Breaking Bad.
Mhm.
I don't think I would ever have thought of, but now kind of thinking of them side by side, I don't know. There's something about the two that does feel very similar.
And they both have a lot of this like sort of tension to them, right? Like
Yeah.
you can feel
Yeah.
you can feel where the characters are, and you can feel the weight of the events on them, right, in both of these shows, which is why I think they're
Yeah.
so good, right? Like I said, I mean the first two episodes were like kinda slow for me in this show, but after the third episode I was hooked. I could feel the impact of every single scene, every single shot, right? Like I could feel it, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I agree. I think the show, and especially for a miniseries, that's so hard to accomplish in 5 hours,
Yeah,
right? Like
The
that's
amount they did in 5 hours is really incredible.
yeah, 5 hours and 30 minutes. I think is the full length of the entire miniseries. Like imagine being able to tell such an impactful story with so many layers of messages and so many different impacts in just 5.5 hours, right? Like
Yeah.
Well, I think the beauty of the show is that it tells the truth, and
mhm.
it does that, and the truth it tells also conveys all those messages. But onto that, actually, there are some points where the show does not tell the truth, which kind of undermines my
Yeah,
point.
yeah. You guys want to talk about the
Yeah.
science of it? I know Jay wanted to. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
So
sure.
yeah.
Actually,
Why
Um,
are you
well,
saying
before we jump into that, I just want to ask one quick question that I
Yeah.
want to get at some point in
Mhm.
this. I just want to ask both of you, best episode, worst episode in your guys' opinions. I'm just curious to hear.
in my opinion, third episode was the best. Second episode was the worst.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Jay?
Honestly, I rate them all about equal, but if I had to pick, I have first and fifth tied as best and worst. Or as best, rather, not best and worst.
And so then, what would you say is the worst?
I don't have a specific worst episode.
Hmm.
I'd personally, I'd say first episode's probably my favorite, just because it sort of feels like this horror movie, and it really gripped me, and was the reason I nearly watched the entire show in one go.
Yeah.
And I'd say probably the fourth one is my least favorite.
Mhm.
I like what it had in terms of its themes, but I don't know, it just felt a little slow.
Yeah, I get it.
Wait, you
Oh.
dislike the fourth episode?
No, I like its themes, but just in terms of overall entertainment, I guess it just sort of felt like after the third episode, the fourth episode really slammed on the brakes, which kind of felt a little jarring.
Yeah, I get it, but like that's sort of like like
I think they're all fantastic, but
Oh, for sure.
if I had to pick one,
Yeah.
it's the fourth
So
one.
the reason I'm actually like a huge fan of the fourth episode, and I totally understand where you're coming from, and the funny part is that like what you're saying is exactly why I like it a lot, right? And again,
Yeah.
it just comes down to like differences in taste, right? But like I'm the
Yeah.
kind of person who loves that like that sort of that like I feel like in the fourth episode the silence says so much, right? Like the most of the episode is very quiet, right? It's not a very talkative like audibly tense episode, right? Like the first episode, which is like you hear these bangs and you hear these clangs and you hear the steam spewing and the you know, like all this nuclear energy and this fire, right? Like it's not very audibly tactile, but I think I think the visuals and the impact of the silence is what makes the fourth episode so powerful. But I think you're right that someone of your taste, if you think like the first episode is the best, then like I agree that like the first episode like it was very sensory, you know what I mean? And it really puts you into there, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what that's why I really look for in visual media,
Yeah.
like TVs and movies, is more for that. I'm sort of I fall into the group that looks more for presentation rather than
Like
drama,
like
I
underline.
guess.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like overall, if you want to just talk in terms of like
Like broad terms.
people,
Yeah.
people will typically fall into one of two
Yeah.
camps, and that's
Yeah.
the people who prefer the talking and the drama, and people who prefer the presentation, like the visuals and the
Yeah.
sounds and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, it comes down to taste, but like, it's so awesome because the show works for both people.
both.
Yeah, like
For both, it's
like
freaking
yeah,
fantastic.
not often are shows able to appeal to both kind of people, right? There are shows like House of Cards will only ever appeal to one kind of person, right? On the other hand, shows like yeah, like
I couldn't finish I couldn't follow House of Cards to its end.
yeah, I mean, like for on the other hand, like the kind of watcher I am, I ate up House of Cards. You know what I mean? Like that was one of my that's one of my favorite shows ever, right? So it's like the fact that Chernobyl is like a sort of like Breaking Bad, for example. Like both these shows, the reason they're so amazing is because they appeal to both people.
Yeah, Breaking Bad is another example. Great
Yeah.
in terms of characters and dialogue, also great for its
Visuals
for
and
presentation
yeah.
and set pieces. Yeah.
Exactly. Like I think that's what makes these shows like go down as some of the best in history. You know what I mean?
I think any movie or TV show, what
Yeah.
really makes it stand out and go down in history are the ones that do both of those so perfectly. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
we can also talk about that in terms of Game of Thrones and stuff like that.
Oh
but
yeah.
we're getting off topic.
Yeah.
We want to leave some time for J-Mund here
Yeah.
to talk about
So
design
Jay,
aspect of it.
yeah, Jay. So I did actually when I was preparing for this episode, I did read that like a lot of people are kind of half impressed with Chernobyl because they're like, wow, they while exposing a lot of like truths, well not exposing, but like while bringing to light and popularizing a lot of like the actual truth of the situation, there was a lot of like sort of hyperbole. So could you expand on that? Because I didn't really understand that aspect of it.
First of all, people don't die of radiation poisoning nearly as fast as they showed it.
Okay. So in reality, how like what's like the actual like how like is it like more of like a year thing? Like does it take like people like lifetimes to die of it?
It's often months, if not higher cancer rates.
Oh,
So
okay.
I think, interestingly enough, you know the scene where where the West German rover fails and then they have to put men on the roof instead.
Yeah.
Those exposure times for like deaths for this much time is likely to cut your lifetime in half. That's actually accurate.
Oh
And most of
wow.
the people, and if you remember the numbers within the plant, those are similar. Those exposure times wouldn't cause the harm they caused. if
Oh
that makes
okay.
sense.
All right.
Okay. Well, I want to ask you, remember the scene in the first episode where the firefighter picks up the block of graphite and then like a few minutes later it burned through his glove and his hand is just covered in like warts and not warts, but
Yeah, like
whatever.
blisters and stuff.
blisters and stuff like that. Is that accurate? And like if someone's exposed to that much concentrated radiation, are you saying that wouldn't like burn and burn
they'd
through
just
someone
die.
and kill them that fast?
They
They
would
just straight up die without any physical symptoms. The thing is that you wouldn't.
So
get
that blistering wouldn't happen?
the blistering's from heat, I'd say, because it's also a burning block
Yeah.
of graphite.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, but I feel like I like the point is I think you're right that like there are like quite a few like scientific inaccuracies, right? But like at the end of the day, that like it wouldn't have been as impactful if like instead of seeing these people physically burned alive and covered in blood and blisters, they were just like, oh, look, this dude is just like slightly sick and is gonna die of cancer in 15 years, right? Like it's. You know what I mean? Like it probably wouldn't.
Novelization is necessary, but it's not accurate.
Yeah, I could see that, and I feel like we could probably do like an entire episode in the future about like drama versus like I mean like the sake of presentation versus accuracy to content, right? In like documentaries and stuff like that. We can totally do like an episode
Oh,
on
that's
that. Yeah.
Oh,
that's a
I
topic
should,
that people have been talking about for decades.
Oh yeah.
I
I mean.
should also add, by the way, a lot of the things that people say
Essays and
didn't happen
essays about
actually.
that.
Oh.
A lot of the things people
yeah.
say didn't happen actually did happen.
So like
Like,
what, for example?
The bridge scene actually happened.
Oh wow, really?
Well, that's debatable. If the bridge scene happened is super debatable, but most people tend to agree that there is evidence that it did happen. Like,
Huh.
from what I can tell.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously this
I don't
was
think-
this
I
is
don't think that's
based.
something to get caught up on.
So-
I think no matter what.
Yeah.
And I should also add that the shooting of the dogs apparently actually happened.
Oh yeah,
But
I
can
actually
imagine that.
I read that on the I mean Wikipedia is not the most reliable source apparently, but when I was looking through Wikipedia, apparently yeah, like they did actually have like they sent out like teams to just exterminate as many animals in the exclusion zones as possible because I mean like the logic I feel like is sound that like animals that are radioactive should not touch non-radioactive people, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
But it's interesting that now you see all these reports and stuff about animals like actually flourishing in the exclusion zone, like away from
oh yeah.
humans, like
Mhm.
so it's kind of it's interesting in the show seeing that at first they just tried to get rid of them all, but now it's like a haven for
Yeah.
these animals.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean
I-
yeah. Go ahead.
Before that, I would also add
Mm-hmm.
quickly that among other things that actually did happen, didn't happen in this case. The idea that somehow this could have killed off most of the population of Europe is fundamentally incorrect.
Yeah.
That
I mean
wasn't going to happen.
I feel like that's another dramatization thing,
Yeah.
but it still would have been devastating, right?
yeah.
Because, like,
To
even-
Eastern Europe, yeah.
Yeah.
But I
Oh,
mean,
well.
it would just cause the collapse of
Alright,
the
so-
USSR.
so-
It wouldn't have done much else.
So Jay,
No, but I mean, like, even if the radiation didn't kill people via radiation poisoning, it still would have been devastating in terms of it getting into water.
yeah. So
livestock. and
that's what
stuff
I was
like
gonna
that.
ask. Is that there's a whole like scene about them needing like 3 years and like hundreds of thousands of like 750,000 men to like send to like let us stop to help not let them melt down and get into the water supply. So like from what I understand that like they prevented that, right? Like
Yeah, the meltdown's not in the water supply, but the meltdown wasn't going to end up being too problematic in the water supply in the first place.
really?
Because that's a really the quickest way for me to phrase that is that's a really, really, really exaggerated hypothetical.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like I get that like it's a ton of water and like the radiation, like the actual like nuclear content wouldn't probably be that much, but like I feel like any radioactive material in my water is a bad thing, you know?
Do you dislike bananas in your water?
Is that wait? Are bananas radioactive?
Yes.
Yeah.
bananas
Oh.
are- Yeah,
Did
potassium
you see the
decays.
Veritasium video? Did
Yeah.
you see the Veritasium video?
No, I've never seen
Yeah.
that. You guys should
No,
send it to
bananas
me.
are
I'll send it to
radioactive.
you.
Huh. All right. Well,
But isn't there that thing that was, but wasn't the thing that was like leaking down through the bottom of the entire place that thing called the elephant's foot, which is literally just
oh yeah, yeah.
molten radioactive material.
Oh yeah, no, the elephant's foot is very radioactive, and if
So
you go
won't
too
that-
close to it, you will die.
Yeah,
But
so
if
won't
you
that have
were to-
leaked into the water supply? Isn't that
Well,
what
if you
would have been
diffuse it
leaking?
over a larger area, it's less of a
Yeah.
problem. Also, it's currently still decaying, so it's not nearly as much of a problem now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's still, again, an issue, but
Yeah.
The elephant's foot freaking scares.
Yeah.
That thing's
Yeah.
crazy.
Wait.
Also, I should add, it
that was in the
has-
show, right? When was that in the
Yeah.
show?
The elephant's foot?
Yeah.
No,
What
it
episode?
wasn't.
No, was it?
well, it is. That was the core. That was
Oh.
the mass that was sinking down. But I would add, it hasn't
what
been
episode
yet
was that in?
2016. It
It
was
wasn't.
episode
It
with-
wasn't pictured in it.
Oh,
Though.
okay.
No, it wasn't pictured, but it was sort of mentioned often.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But where I was going with that was the elephant's foot actually hasn't moved for a while now, not significantly at least. So it's not gonna.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not
No,
gonna,
but I
like-
mean, like at that time.
Yeah.
But the elephant's foot wasn't the contained part. Like,
Mhm.
and logically, if the elephant's foot wouldn't have caused that, then the rest of it also wouldn't have caused that. Plus, it's decaying.
Yeah,
so it's
that's
nothing
true.
to
I
do
mean,
with that.
if the most radioactive part is like a relative non-issue, then I'd be surprised if the less radioactive parts are. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think the creative liberties they took with the exaggeration, or I mean, whether or not it was over exaggerated or not is a question for another day. But like I think that it was just impactful enough, and like we felt the real danger throughout the show. You know what I mean? Like you felt wow, this like there are so many people, whether or not it's a continent or a country, a lot of people are in danger, right? And this needs to be solved.
There was a danger, and I think they really need to play up the immediate danger.
Yeah.
Because I feel like in reality, half the danger again is what would have happened to water and livestock and just and land in terms of that. But to make it more dramatized for a show, it was more about showing kind of kill like body counts, what would have happened.
And like why would you have cared about like, you know, like the political drama and like you know like people not doing stuff if it wasn't time sensitive, you know what I mean? Like,
I have a question for Jay about a scientific question. I don't know if he can answer it, about the RBMK reactor.
Oh Lord.
Let's see if he can answer this. I saw a thing about how apparently like at the end of the show when they were talking about how the control rods are tipped with graphite, like in the show, when I heard that, I was like, I don't understand why they would do that. That doesn't really make any sense. And I heard that was like an oversimplification of it. Could you possibly explain why they were tipped with graphite?
Okay, well, first of all, Legasov's not wrong. It is technically for cost reasons, but beyond that, when you put them in, it reaccelerates the reaction, and keep in mind that's only dangerous when the reactor is already spiking power output.
Okay.
In most other cases, it means the reactor starts up faster. So only in very few cases does it actually cause problems.
Oh, so it was just like the safest option, like safety per cost. It was the best option.
It wasn't the safest option, but it was like the least not bad option, I guess. Yeah. At least within the context. Obviously, not having graphite tipped control rods would have been a better idea. Yeah. But no.
All right. Well, I guess I mean we do you guys have any like final thoughts about the show? Anything else you guys want to include?
9 out of 10, probably a 10 out of 10, but I like to give time before I give things a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I'd agree.
That's fair. That's fair.
I'm generally one that believes I think a 10 out of 10 is never something you should give on a first watch.
And not just that, but I feel like 10 out of 10s go to things that are timeless. You know what I mean? Like like
Gone with the Wind.
As of right now,
that is such a good
we could talk for hours about ratings. And how people can do it, but personally, I'd say 9 out of 10. I think it's very close to being perfect.
Yeah, I'd agree. I feel like there were some places they could have like sort of like slightly slimmed some fat, right? Like there were some scenes that like that maybe just like didn't have to be there, but like you're right, like it's literally just nitpicking, right? And any discrepancies I have with the show is just nitpicking, right? Like everything at the end of the day that was in the show, it contributed to the overall message and theme well enough to where it still left a pretty powerful impact on me. So I'd agree, 9 out of 10, very close to perfect, if not there.
Yeah.
Right.
I would either agree with that, or honestly, I don't mind giving 10s out of 10s. I guess I'm weird in that respect. So,
but yeah, overall, really good. You guys should all watch it. I know you watch it out there if you don't have an HBO Now or HBO Go or whatever.
Steal your friend's HBO.
Yeah.
Steal
no,
it,
but
illegal.
but how? But it's
get the trial.
It's only 5.
Watch it all in a night.
Yeah, literally, just get the trial, a 7-day trial. That's what I did. I watched the entire thing like this week, and like I mean, it's a 5.5 hour show. You're not watching Game of Thrones, right? It's
5.5 hours can be daunting, but honestly, I wasn't expecting it. I just kind of wanted to watch the first episode. I nearly binged the entire thing. I would have watched it all in one go if it wasn't like
if you didn't stop
by the time I finished the third episode.
Yeah. But all right. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed. We originally intended this to be a shorter episode, but we've gone on for a normal episode length now. But yeah.
It was a good conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, this is a really good show to talk about, and but yeah, I hope you all enjoyed. All right, JSN Podcast signing off.
Thank you.